If you had to look all around you, there are no short supply of ideas. I mean, if you had to ask the next person sitting right next to you, share your ideas with me, your business ideas, that next big thing, everyone would have something interesting and intriguing to say. However, the ability to run with those ideas and see them to the finish line is an entirely different subject matter. And that is why today on Real Talk, we will be getting into the conversation surrounding getting and staying inspired. Welcome to the Real Talk, ladies and gentlemen, and I am your girl Chika, as always, and with me, per usual.
Hi guys, it's Anthony here again. Welcome.
Anthony, you're looking fly. You're chopping too much money, eh? Look at Anthony actually told Steven, you're going to show my shoes and my socks. You know, everything's popping.
You also look awesome too.
Thank you so
nice
much.
hair.
Thank you so
You're
much. So
welcome.
let's talk, Anthony, the real talk on the real. Why is it that it's all too easy for anybody? I mean, a lot of people, a lot of 9-to-5ers have even been told that, you know, before you leave your 9-to-5 job, because sometimes millennials especially, there's this crazy impromptu, almost impulsive desire to just get up and walk away from it and say, oh, I can do it on my own, you know. And not to discredit the authenticity of that feeling of wanting to do something for yourself, or wanting to run with an idea that comes alive so vividly in your mind. Why is it that sometimes, or more than half the time, it's all too easy to have wonderful, unique ideas which are so tangible, ideas which you know in your guts will resonate. There's ideas which will churn money, which there's a market for. Half the time, we all have ideas like that, which inspire us to go out and get it done. But eventually, along the line, you find that sometimes it's a case of, as we grow older, our perspective begins to change, and so you see that we begin to lose momentum. Sometimes life throws different things at us, challenges, obstacles, and we begin to second guess and say, okay, maybe this wasn't it, and maybe maybe this move was ill-timed, and we begin to make all these rational excuses for that inspiration which we first had. And then you find that little by little, we begin to mellow or cool off. And it's looking like a case of dead on arrival. Why do you feel it's that way sometimes?
For me, I just think it's easy to fall into that trap when maybe starting out a business or starting out whatever. It doesn't have to be a business, whatever it is in life. Especially when you have a projected goal in mind and you're starting to see that you're not getting traction, maybe after a while of doing something you feel like, you know, this is what I'm gunning for, and after a while and you're not getting traction, it's just normal, or I think it's part of being a human to start to second guess yourself, to somehow lose that zest that you started with, or the fire that you started with. And I think it's just normal. But one thing that I know is, if for any reason we find ourselves in that spot, you know, getting to that spot isn't bad, but staying there, that's where the problem is.
Okay.
You get it? So
would you say it's a case of being totally unprepared, or would you say sometimes you can chalk it up to maybe overshooting? You know how when the hype is real, like, oh, I'm going to do this is going to go this way. So in your head, you've made projections as to how you think that idea you have, which you've been inspired by. You have pictures in your mental as to how it will go, but then maybe you've overshot, or maybe you just haven't thought it through to the end. And sometimes people will say, oh, don't overthink it, you know, just start, do it, make it up as you go. So would you say that some of those things can also come into play when it comes to getting inspiration but losing it at some point?
Right. True, from an angle it can, but I'd like to think, don't box yourself or don't limit your expectations. Like, it's, if you want to do something and you have this very big crazy goal in mind, you know, go for it. And if at any point it feels like it's not forthcoming and you're starting to second guess yourself, what I think you should do is just backtrack and try to reevaluate those big audacious goals that you started with, and maybe kind of break them into smaller achievable goals that, you know, that over time, the summation of everything, you see yourself, shunning for that same, initial giant goal that you started with. So it's normal. I don't tell people to limit their goals. You see, start out with some crazy ideas, start out with some audacious goals. That's awesome. So that when you even want to fall back on something, you're falling back on something that's very tangible. You look back and see you've gone far, you've done something pretty good. But if at any point you feel like, you are getting uninspired or getting less motivated, maybe because you're not getting enough traction, in that space, just try to backtrack and reevaluate what you've done so far, and just find a way to break down those big audacious goals into maybe smaller ones that you can actually achieve, faster.
Okay. So just to piggyback off what you've said in terms of taking stock of, how far you have come, the thrust of today's conversation will not center on whether or not you will be inspired. At every point in time in your life, there'll be moments where you feel like, okay, I've got this, I should do this. This is absolutely going to work.
Yeah.
The thrust of our conversation today will be centered on what are those things, if you're in a place right now where you're feeling like you're stuck in a rut, where you feel like you have lost momentum, where you're feeling like you don't even know how to proceed. You were inspired to start off something, you've put your fingers, you put your hand to the plow, and you're at the point where you're like, where do I go next from here? How do I keep this running for the long haul? If you're at that point in your life, then this conversation is for you. So listen up. What are certain things that you can do to ensure that you don't just get inspired, but you stay inspired for the long term, for the long course? My very first tip, which I personally had to apply to myself, is finding or remembering, consistently calling to mind your why. Now, this is why it's so important. I know that a lot of motivational speakers will often talk about what's your why.
True.
It's not a cliche, actually. It's very important to always remind yourself the reasons why you do what you do.
True.
That's the only single propeller as to what will push you, consistently to continue to run that race. If even kids, like little kids, with all of their curiosity, natural, innocent curiosity, will always ask you if they're told to do something. They ask why. Because before they go ahead to do it, they want to know why. And if you give them a good, humane reason that they can relate with, you'll find that almost
naturally,
without a fuss, the kids will go all out and do it. So my number one tip is to always remember and say to yourself, like put it in clear perspective right in front of you what your why is. Is it to take care of your kid? For me, it's knowing that I have to raise my kid as a single mother and having that responsibility, knowing that I have gifts that I've been blessed with and I need to share those gifts with the world. That is my why, which I consistently have to remind, because it's all too easy to lose sight of your why and just forget why you do what you do, and then you begin to lose inspiration.
True. That's awesome, Chika. Your why matters a lot. For me, what I do to keep myself inspired and motivated is, I know it's easy to fall into that trap of just not feeling good enough to want to move, carry on or do something. So what I do is I set up a system around what I do. So this is real estate. I sell properties for a living. I've built a system around what I do. So my business is structured in a way where I know, okay, at so time, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm making sales calls. I'm doing follow-ups at so time. I'm scouting at so time. I'm posting at so time. I'm doing all of this at so time. So that when I fall into that trap, or I wake up, I'm not feeling so inspired to do something, because I have an already sort out template of, this is what you do at this time. This is what you do at this time. I just simply, it's like I'm getting reminders. Oh, do this now. So I don't have to start asking, what do I do today? I don't have to start asking, okay, when do I do this thing? It's already structured. That's the way I somehow build a consistency that grows into a habit in the long run. So and that's how I just...
Which helps with your staying inspired.
Yeah, so someone from the outside would think, oh, he's always inspired, he's always gingered, he's always...
It's the systems you have set in place that help for everything to run as a fine unit.
True, that's
cohesively.
It. That's true.
That's so true. Another thing that comes to mind is just the natural nature, the triumphant nature of the human spirit. I'm sure I mean, if you're online, if you research, if you read stories, true life stories, too many people who came from absolutely nothing, who when you read their stories, you're in awe as to how they made it out. out of the quagmire. You read stories of people like Nick Vujicic. I always have a problem saying his last name, but there's so many triumphant stories of people who literally rose from nothing into becoming everything and more that they thought they would be. And when you read stories like that, what that says to you is that it helps you connect on a human level, because you know that those people aren't spirits; they're actually humans with the same shortcomings that you have, humans with the same with the same humane abilities that you have. And so when you read those stories, what that does to you is to keep things in perspective and say, no, these challenges that are in front of you are not an absolute stopper as to achieving what you set your heart to.
That's
and it inspires you to continue.
Chika, we said a whole lot today, actually.
Right, time flies though.
Time flies.
There's a whole lot more
real,
to be said.
Hi guys, just before we wrap this up, I'd like for you to go ahead and subscribe. If you love what you hear, just subscribe, hit the bell button, and to keep getting notifications when we put out contents like this. And also, if you have something you would like to ask us, if you have questions,
topics you like us to talk on,
just feel free, send us a message. You could comment wherever you're watching this video on right now, and trust us to bring it on here to talk about it. So
that has been Real Talk. We love to talk, but time just flies.
So I'm sure you took one or two things.
Absolutely.
Setting up structures, going back to your why when you feel so uninspired, and
just reading up on stories, on triumphant stories that serve as a huge motivation.
Absolutely great.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Real Talk. We will see you with something even more interesting next time we meet.
Bye.
Ciao.